Secretary Bill Sack and U.S. Trade Representative Michael Froman are in China this week to discuss intellectual property and trade. But with recent rejections of U.S. corn shipments, future corn exports to China could be on the line. Since mid-November, Chinese officials have rejected 30% of its corn imports from the U.S. Just last week, 10 cargoes, which contained 600,000 tons of grain, was quarantined by Chinese authorities because it contained genetically modified corn that wasn't approved in the country. The U.S. has been pushing China to approve a specific Syngenta GM corn strain that continues to be rejected. Now, it's unclear whether future shipments will continue to be rejected. Officials say that largely depends on the Secretary's talks this week. China is the world's third largest corn importer. While there are hurdles for U.S. corn in China, will other countries and feed users continue to push U.S. corn demand throughout 2014? Well, last week I caught up with Angie McGuire of Citizens Grain to discuss. Angie, it's that time of year where we really need to look at 2014. Let's look at corn. What are your expectations going into what, after we had such a large year in 2013?
They're all over the board at this point in time, but I do think from a new crop perspective there are opportunities presenting themselves, and there are going to be some level of support just purely because of the fact that we don't want to see the ratio get too out of whack between corn and beans. But a lot of guys tell me they're going to be heavily planting soybeans this coming spring. Of course, weather will be the final determining factor in that. But I think we'll keep a risk premium in place, so to speak, to make sure it doesn't get too far off, but we have to keep in mind too that we're carrying a decent amount of stocks forward.
What impact will the ethanol market have on corn prices next year?
There's been some concern that with the discussion from the EPA on lowering the mandate, the ethanol mandate, that we would have some issues. However, in last week's WASDE report, we saw the USDA increase ethanol usage. We also saw in the Energy Information Administration's report that ethanol usage was nearly a record high for the week, or corn used for ethanol.
Was that a shock to you?
It wasn't a shock. Talking to the ethanol producers that I work with, we are seeing significant crush margins or grind margins. It's paying. The corn's cheap. Ethanol has stayed reasonably strong, so it's paying to crush or grind corn to make ethanol.
We're talking about end users. Let's talk about, PEDV. We've been talking a lot about that on the show. Porcine epidemic diarrhea virus. We thought we may see some expansion next year in the hog numbers. That may be an issue now because of the PEDV. What type of impact is that having?
I'm seeing some of my own local hog producers are running into some issues with it, and of course that could potentially back off their demand for corn and meal, or in other feedstuffs or feed byproducts. So it could have an impact. We really need to see. At this point, I'm looking at it and thinking, is this something I should be paying attention to because it will have a major impact for feed demand here next quarter and beyond, or is it something that hopefully we'll be able to remedy, and with the colder weather perhaps see it slow in its spread?
Well, even if we see that demand slow, do you think that our world demand can pick that up?
World demand may be tough. It depends. The South America crop's going to be a touch smaller, so there will be some more opportunities in that respect. That part will help us out immensely.
All right. Thanks so much, Angie. I appreciate it. Please stay with us. We'll be back with more Ag Day in just 2 minutes.
Ag Day, brought to you by Ag Explore. Nurse your soil back to health with the right prescription of Endzone and Prevent.